It's a terrific feeling of huge family all enjoying this moment that you've created.
Herb Elliott retired after this victory. But he and Cerruti weren't the only duo from the Southern Hemisphere who believed in the importance of a coaching strategy. Across the Tasman Sea in New Zealand, their exploits were watched by a coach, Arthur Lydiard, and a runner, Peter Snell, who were poised to employ their own radical tactics to win Olympic gold.
Lydiard was the first person that ever told me, Peter, you could be a great runner, you could be even a champion, you could be an Olympian. And that's music to a high achiever's ears to hear someone say that.
Most runners of this era continued to follow the interval training favoured by Paavo Nurmi. Lydiard, a former marathon runner, seen here, believed completing long distances at an even pace was better preparation. He had Snell run over 20 miles a day. No middle distance runner had ever done this before.
Now Lydiard came along and said, well, we need endurance. He said, if you can get to the stage of being able to run my 22-mile course hard and then come back and do the same thing the next day, then you'll be right for anything. And it does get to that. You can actually run that 22 hard and feel great afterwards.
But Lydiard's theory went against all the accepted medical advice of the time and put him at odds with the athletics authorities in New Zealand, who feared runners like Snell would become burnt out.
It just didn't seem to make sense to other coaches. Running at a slow pace for long distances has nothing to do with the 1500 metres.
Like Cerruti, Arthur Lydiard believed in using the natural landscape. The steep hills leading up to the Waitakere Mountains that surrounded Snell's hometown of Auckland were perfect for testing and building his endurance.
Running about an hour a day on grassy surfaces until I was conditioned enough to be able to handle longer runs. The first 10 miles, things are going along quite nicely, and then the work up the hill starts to get to you, and that's good. You look to your right and you see the Tasman Sea, and you look over to the left and it's the Pacific Ocean. It's a great feeling.
Under the direction of Lydiard, Snell's training began to strengthen his heart and lower his resting pulse rate. This put him in peak condition.
The heart is getting bigger and it's able to push more out with each beat. The average person, it's about 70 beats a minute, and so mine eventually got down to about 36. But also, as one starts exercising, there's a long way to go from 36 up to one's maximal heart rate, which is for a young person about 200 beats a minute.
This meant Snell would have greater endurance. He could run faster for longer. Going into the 1964 Olympic Games in Tokyo, Snell felt his endurance was so high that he would attempt to win gold in both the 800 and 1500 meters.
My problem was, would I tire myself in the 800 and not have enough left for the 1500?
Snell won the 800 meters and set a new Olympic record. Now, all eyes were on the 1500 meters. Did Snell have enough stamina to win a second gold?
3 3/4 lengths to the track, regarded by many, the 1500 meters, as the blue ribbon of the game. Back in the familiar position, bringing up the rear of the field, Peter Snell.
The race was relatively slow. I felt that I needed to be up close to the front. And pretty much stayed that way until the main action of the 1500 meters in the last lap.
Look at Snell box now. What's Snell going to do? He's absolutely caught in the curve. There's no way through.
I had to actually push my way out, check whether anyone else was doing anything. Nothing was happening. I thought, well, I'm not going to wait any longer.
Snell's endurance training allowed him to unleash an astonishing final kick.
Right, fella, now look at Snell go. The famous New Zealander's kick. He exploded then.
One can only do this sort of kick if you're floating and cruising. It's not about speed. I only look to be going fast if you're looking at my running action. I am lengthening my stride and I have the energy left to be able to do that.
Finding out that the one that got the medal was still there. Snell's going to be champion. And Snell wins. And Finchley's going to lose it. Snell wins.
And I think if you look at film, look pretty relaxed. There's no sort of collapsing over the line stuff, like Bannister.
Crashes down as he goes across the line.
Snell's twin victories seemingly vindicated Arthur Lydiard's coaching strategy. Yet, even after this, his methods were still mistrusted by the New Zealand athletics authorities. So Lydiard accepted an offer to coach in Finland, which, since Paavo Nurmi's retirement, had not won a single Olympic gold medal.
The Finnish runners didn't train enough. What he brought with him was that you had to run a minimum of 100 miles or 160 kilometers a week, and this totally changed the attitude of the Finnish runners.
At the Munich Olympics in 1972, Pekka Varsala, having followed Lydiard's training regime, made an immediate impact in the 1500 meters.
Varsala comes to the outside, but Varsala seems to have the speed. And Varsala comes home for another gold medal for Finland. Varsala was always the danger.
When Varsala took the gold medal, it was the first time that Finland had won the Olympic 1500 meters since 1928. His countryman, Lassi Viren, also won gold in the 5,000 and 10,000 meters. Arthur Lydiard was credited with this re-establishment of the Finnish Olympic tradition.
Of course, it meant a lot to me, but even more to the people of Finland, who have loved running ever since Paavo Nurmi.
In the 1970s, Lydiard's methods were being adopted by coaches and athletes from around the world who believed his endurance training held the key to winning Olympic gold. But by 1978, a new Olympic power had emerged, which would challenge this consensus with fresh approaches to training, producing a generation of runners who would dominate the Games for the next decade. Leading this new golden era for British athletics was Sebastian Coe.
Coming up to the finish line, and I think he's got it. A new world record for Great Britain and for Sebastian Coe.
Poetry in motion is an overused phrase, but he seemed to float. His greatness was the speed to be able to just bury his opponents.
But it's Sebastian Coe really making the rest of this field look very, very pedestrian.
He was incredibly difficult to beat. Do you go hard? Yes, he's going to be able to stay with you because he can run world record pace. Do you sit and wait? No, he's got great 400 metre pace. He can out-kick you over 150, 200 metres.
Between 1978 and 1980, Coe set new world records for every middle distance event.
He's got to be very close. Tremendous run, and he's done it.
But Coe was hotly pursued by fellow Briton Steve Ovett, who matched Coe's 1500 metre world record time.
So Ovett matches that world record, and he matches Sebastian Coe every step of the way to Moscow.
I don't think I probably raced against anybody who was more naturally talented.
Coe and Ovett would form an intense rivalry, but who was the best? The Moscow Olympics would decide. the Games started disastrously for Coe. Despite holding the world record, he lost the 800 metres to Steve Ovett.
My 800 metres was a pretty unspectacular performance, and I ran very poorly. So I then had effectively 3 days to sort of regroup.
Coe was written off by the British press, but he had one more chance for Olympic glory in the final of the 1500 metres. Ovett, though, was now favourite to win.
If I was honest, I would have put my house on Ovett winning the 1500 metres. Seb was meant to win the 8, so Ovett had won his event. Here we are at the 1500, an event Ovett had not been beaten in up to that point in his senior career. Coe, the broken man, and had lost the race he should have won. We get into the call-up room. You get put into this tiny room for 25 minutes before going out into the cauldron of the Olympic arena, and everything that you've trained for and everything that you've dreamed about is going to take place in the next half an hour or so. And Seb got up at one point and started pacing up and down the room, which I took as a sign of nervousness. And Ovett gets up, and I thought, oh, hang on, here we go. Ovett's finally got the confidence to kind of walk up and down with Seb. But then I started thinking, hang on a minute, this is maybe not the case. This is somebody who actually, it's a bit like when you're going into a dangerous situation, you want to hold the hand of somebody who's going to go along with you. It was almost Steve wanting to feel as though they were in this together, whereas Seb was incredibly focused and didn't want to chat at all.
And I guess I went into the race knowing that with my 800 metre speed, which had returned, I just thought, look, the only way I'm going to lose this is if I'm out of contact, because there's nobody in the field that's going to outrun me over 400 metres.
For me, making the final was my gold medal, if you like. I was 19, I was just delighted to be there, and you've got this massive stadium in Moscow, and it's full, and you are on the start line. This is the Olympic final. The gun goes, and you're still standing there. So I was last right at the very beginning. Got into the race, and it was slow early on.
Ovett's in 4th place, covering it nicely, moving up behind Coe's. Travis really slow.
The race was very slow. We got to 800 metres in 2:09. I think the English school girls 800 metres that year was running a quicker time. And then Jürgen Straub, as though he'd sort of looked down onto the track and picked the imaginary mark and suddenly just ran by home over 700 metres. So in essence, we had 2 warm-up laps and an 800. And of course, under those circumstances, I accepted. There was very little way I was going to lose that race.
Starting to move up. Coe is starting his sprint now in the field. Coe hits the front, looks around, and he's got Ovett on his shoulder. And now this is the test. He's got 2 metres on him, and Ovett's going to have to sprint all the way here. Coe's away in the front, and it looks as if Coe's going to do it. Coe is going to win the 1500 metres, and Ovett's going to get only a bronze medal. A fantastic run by Coe. He's done it. He's got the gold. In 2nd place, Straub.
Coe's victory was a tactical triumph. The race had been over 6 seconds slower than his own world record, and he had used his devastating final kick to speed to the finish line. Watching Coe win gold in Moscow was his father, Peter, who behind the scenes had masterminded his Olympic victory. Peter Coe had constructed a new training regime, which rejected the strategy of Arthur Lydiard.
He was absolutely central to everything I did. And he really did do it very differently. He made the judgment that I shouldn't be just bashing out mile after mile without any real thought behind it. So I didn't come from that school of running at the time, like, the Arthur Lydiard, for instance, genuinely thought that you had to be comfortable and almost certainly be able to run a marathon. I expected that for people like Peter Snell.
Peter Coe designed a training method known as speed endurance. Unlike interval training, which varied the pace, this regime concentrated on extended sprints